Hello, welcome to another Masterclass video. Today we're looking at all the best strategies, tips and tricks in order to become an expert in playing Kylo Ren. This video will be split into sections: the overview, the abilities, the game modes and star cards, combos and counters, and finally the conclusion. And yes, I know I sound like a child because I am a child, but you'll have to trust me on this one as we go through everything you need to know in order to play Kylo Ren. If this is the kind of content you enjoy, then subscribe, like the video, turn notifications as it really helps other content creators and I personally really appreciate it, etc, etc. Right, let's get into the video. So, overview. Kylo Ren is a very offensive, no not that kind, gameplay focused character. He has a solid 750 health and a normal regen delay of 5 seconds. Kylo has overall great stamina, being able to put out 14 swings in attack, deflect another 14 in defense, or alternatively deflect 1112 damage in blaster bolts. His stamina regen is an average 2 seconds, meaning that Kylo seems to be an all-round average hero. He does 125 damage per hit from the front and 165 damage per hit on the back, meaning Kylo gains more benefit over other heroes from targeting the back of enemies, while doing a normal amount of damage to the front. These stats would incline me to say that as Kylo you can be confident that you can overpower your opponents with your above average stamina, while attempting to hit strikes to the opponent's back and putting pressure on them by dodging behind them. Now that we looked at his base stats, we can look at Kylo's abilities. Despite his seemingly average stats, Kylo has exceptional abilities that can make or break fights with opponents. Firstly, Force Pull does 10 damage with a large range of 20 meters, not to be used to hurt opponents, but to knock them down and bring them to you. It can be used while jumping, similarly to Luke's push, meaning you can take your enemies by surprise, and is especially useful for closing the gap on gunners or disrupting a team fight to turn the tide. If an enemy is fleeing you by jumping or just running, it's a perfect ability to finish them off or leave them vulnerable to your teammates' abilities. However, try to use it sparingly and in good situations, as it has a relatively large recharge of 20 seconds, so you may only be able to use it once or twice per fight. Second is Frenzy. This ability does 160 damage per hit to non-heroes and 115 damage per hit to heroes. This ability has auto lock-on but cannot be cancelled once begun, and you cannot block for an extended amount of time when using it. This can leave you vulnerable to force abilities and should not under any circumstances be used when you're under 250 health, as the opponent can simply attack you in return and kill you before you can end Frenzy. The special thing about Frenzy is that if you're using it against a lightsaber hero that are blocking you, it's guaranteed to hit through the block on the final hit. This means that it can effectively be utilised as something similar to Anakin's Passionate Strike, to finish off opponents or to prevent health regeneration. It can also be used in combination with star cards to maximise Kylo Ren's damage output, which we'll get to later. The best part is that it only has a recharge time of 10 seconds, meaning you can use it quite often, and I recommend using it as soon as it's recharged, not only to prevent health regeneration, but also for reasons that we'll get into later. When in non-hero game modes, it serves very well to quickly and effectively dispatch of enemy troops without having to put too much thought into it. Finally, Frenzy is also perfect to use if you need to regenerate your stamina, as it allows you to attack opponents without draining your own stamina pool. Finally, we have Force Freeze. This ability's effect is that it prevents enemies hit by it from blocking, moving, or using abilities for 2.5 seconds. This is where Kylo's extra damage from attacks to the back can come into play. Freezing an opponent at close quarters can allow you to dodge behind them and get 1 to 2 hits on their back, dealing a base damage of 330 health points. We can increase this a lot by using the correct star cards, but again, we'll get into it later. One tip while using this ability is to acknowledge that blasters and Palpatine's lightning will not take opponents out of freeze, while your lightsaber strikes will. To maximise damage, pause for a moment before attacking to allow your teammates to do as much damage as possible. Force Freeze can also leave opponents open to other abilities such as Force Choke, leading to a combination that does so much damage at full potential to instantly kill most heroes. However, this ability has a very high recharge rate of 24 seconds, and so you'll almost certainly only have one opportunity to use it in a fight, unless it's an extended fight. Additionally, a badly timed freeze can ruin combos, such as Vader's choke or a Maul about to get a ledge kill, as it will literally freeze opponents mid-air. Use this ability very wisely, usually against gunners, as it is very high risk and high reward in fights.
Increase fatality production by 50% to achieve victory.
Kylo Ren in larger games such as Supremacy and Galactic Assault is very different from Kylo Ren in HVV and Showdown games. You must use your abilities to incapacitate and stun your enemies and to allow your teammates to take advantage of them. Focusing more on horde clearing, the cards I use are Berserking Tantrum to increase your possible attacks before running out of stamina, allowing you to press the attack even more than usual. Second is Harsh Pull. This card increases the damage of Kylo's Force Pull from 10 damage to 60, meaning it will leave most opponents on one-shot health for you to slice and dice. This card is only worthwhile using in game modes where you are fighting many enemies, as the amount of damage you do per pull is increased with every enemy affected by it. In hero game modes, 50 extra damage isn't too much, especially with only up to 4 opponents. But if you force pull 10 to 15 AI or player troops, this card allows you to do tons of damage with a single ability, but isn't worth it compared to other cards you could use in hero game modes. Thirdly, I use Bloodlust, a card that increases damage done by Frenzy to non-heroes from 160 to 180. Similarly to Harsh Pull, this card is only useful in non-hero focused games as Frenzy does reduced damage to heroes, but you can quickly dispatch of large groups of enemies or focus on one reinforcement. Anything with less than 550 health is basically guaranteed to die. Jet Trooper, dead. Ozavian Gunner, dead. Clone Commando, dead. And remember, this ability only has a cooldown of 10 seconds, so this card can seriously boost your damage output in horde modes. In Supremacy and Galactic Assault, focus on using your abilities against as many enemies as possible, and then using your increased defensive stamina to finish off whoever is left standing. You could probably put co-op in the same category as Supremacy or Galactic Assault, as when you're a hero they're all effectively horde clearers, with the exception that in co-op you're fighting AI exclusively. However, there's one key difference between them, which encourages a slight change in star card loadout. In co-op, there are 4 hero slots for players to play, meaning your entire team could play heroes if they wanted. But in Supremacy, there can only ever be 2 heroes at a given time, meaning you're less likely to meet your fellow hero. Due to the capture the point team play of co-op, I usually tend to swap out Harsh Pull for Resilience. The effect of Resilience is that if you're in close proximity to another villain, you gain a damage reduction of 10% for all incoming fire, and your base attack does 20 more damage, an increase of about 15%. This is massive. For all intents and purposes, you can imagine that this card effectively increases Kylo's health from 750 to 825 health points, as long as it's in effect, while simultaneously increasing his damage output as a lightsaber hero to the best in the game, excluding when Count Dooku uses his abilities. Combine this with increased attacking stamina, higher than average damage to the back, and an attack that goes through block, which is also doing 20 extra damage thanks to Bloodlust, among other exceptional abilities, and you can begin to see where Kylo can become a real powerhouse. I highly recommend using this star card in any game mode where you can guarantee you will remain in close proximity to another villain. And last but not least, here are the cards I recommend as Kylo in HVV and Hero Showdown. Firstly, I once again would pick up Berserking Tantrum for the stamina increase on attacking, and Resilience for the insane buffs when near villains. But now you're fighting exclusively enemy heroes. Frenzy does less damage, and I would recommend dropping Bloodlust for Power of Darkness. This star card increases damage on lightsaber attacks by 14 health points for 6 seconds after using Frenzy. This may not seem like a lot, but add this to the 20 extra damage provided by Resilience, and suddenly Kylo can do 200 damage a hit attacking from the back. That effectively means that if you get Force Freeze on someone, you can do a flat 400 damage before they can even attack you back. But you may argue that this effect only lasts for 6 seconds. But remember, the recharge time on Frenzy is only 10 seconds, meaning that you can do Frenzy, do a burst of extra damage, Frenzy, prevent health regen with the final guaranteed hit, burst of damage, Frenzy, repeat. And because you can regenerate stamina whilst doing Frenzy, you end up never stopping attacking, never giving your opponent time to recover to regenerate their health or stamina. This is where Kylo truly excels as one of the best heroes in the game. It might not quite reach the levels of Supreme Meme Lord Count Dooku with all of his abilities and cards, but the damage is more consistent, not relying on abilities with large cooldowns. One thing to note is that Resilience is more optional in Hero Showdown, as you only have one other teammate and they may not even select a villain that will give you the buff from the card. Could it die immediately, or will simply not stay near you. I would recommend perhaps only using Resilience in Hero Showdown if your teammate is on mic with you and you can swap it for Bloodlust if they aren't. This first point is pretty simple. Kylo works well with any hero which will give him his resilience buff, but I would say personally Dooku, with his ability to increase damage you can do to opponents by up to 40%, or Palpatine, able to prevent your opponents from attacking you back, especially whilst you're using Frenzy, and draining their defensive stamina even faster than before. I would not recommend using Kylo as a teammate to Gunners, as he is most powerful with his resilience buff, and he will not be very useful defending the Gunner, as his playstyle does centre around him pressing the attack against enemies rather than waiting for them to come to him. Enemy heroes that Kylo counters are Obi-Wan, being able to pass through his formidable defensive stamina to prevent his large regen with Frenzy, and pretty much any Gunner, as they're all extremely vulnerable to this combo. Force Pull, Frenzy, Freeze, and Attack from behind. Rey is not as effective against Kylo, as his homing on Frenzy means he can still attack accurately despite being mind confused. Perhaps the only hero I might say counters Kylo would be Anakin, able to utilise his Force abilities such as Heroic Might and the damage reduction that comes with it to disrupt Kylo's brutal onslaught. But Anakin's defensive stamina can drain quickly, playing into Kylo's hands. Overall, I would say that you can be confident fighting any heroes as Kylo. So, conclusion. After analysing his base stats, we have found the best cards for Kylo, the result being his build heavily focuses on offensive play, relying massively on damage buffs, stamina buffs, frenzy to get through block and stop regen, defensive buffs, increased damage to behind enemies when fighting in hero-to-hero combat, while utilising crowd control methods and increased area damage to overpower hordes of enemy AI and player troopers. No hero is safe, and most heroes work with Kylo, except blaster villains. We have learned how and when to use abilities, and little techniques that make you an expert in playing Kylo Ren. Remember, the best way to improve is to practice. These instructions alone will not make you esports material, but they should set you on the right path. Obviously, if you hear advice elsewhere that sounds good, please try it out. It's not like anyone can see your KD in this game anyways. Subscribe for more gameplay and tutorials. I'm Smurvian, and thank you for watching my masterclass in how to play Kylo Ren. 不思議だね今の君